Chicago was swallowed by a relentless winter night. Snowflakes fell like cold whispers, blanketing the city in an eerie silence that seemed to smother even the distant hum of traffic. Inside a cramped apartment on the 18th floor of a decaying high-rise, Ethan Tran sat motionless in the blue glow of his computer screen. His fingers hovered hesitantly over the keyboard as he stared at the final lines of code. The program was called SoulLink, an experimental messaging app designed to do something no one had dared before, to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Ethan, a 32-year-old programmer of Vietnamese descent, had spent the last 3 years isolated in this tiny room since the sudden death of his mother. She had been taken in a brutal car accident, a violent collision on a rain-slicked Chicago highway that left Ethan shattered and alone. Nothing about her death made sense to him, and grief had mutated into obsession. SoulLink wasn't just a project. It was his desperate attempt to hear her voice again, to talk to her once more, no matter how impossible that seemed. At this moment, the app was still in its infancy, a rough prototype without a single user. But Ethan had fed it every scrap of his mother's digital footprint. Text messages, emails, voicemails, photos, even fragments of her DNA from an old ancestry kit she had sent him years ago. The idea was insane, untested, perhaps cursed, but it was the only chance he had. The silence in the room stretched thin as he clicked the activate button. The screen flickered, and then nothing. The faint hum of the computer filled the air. His heart pounded in his chest as he waited for something, anything. Suddenly, his phone vibrated sharply on the desk. The screen lit up, showing a new message notification. From Mom. Ethan's breath hitched. His hands trembled uncontrollably. He stared at the screen, unable to believe what he saw. The message blinked slowly, ominously. Ethan, it's cold here. Are you warm? His mind reeled. It had to be a glitch, or some cruel prank by a hacker. But how? No one else had access to the app. No one else knew his mother's private details. Least of all this. He typed, his fingers shaking. Who is this? The reply came almost instantly. Don't pretend you don't know me. It's me, your mother. Ethan's vision blurred with tears and disbelief. His knees gave way and he sank to the floor. The cold crept beneath his skin, spreading into his bones like ice. A part of him screamed to throw the phone away, to shut down the computer and forget this nightmare. But another, darker part needed answers. More messages followed, each one more detailed, more intimate. I see you open the window again last night. The wind whispered, didn't it? Ethan's mind flashed back to childhood memories. He had always left his bedroom window cracked open, terrified of the dark, but too stubborn to admit it. Only his mother ever knew. He glanced toward the window in his apartment. It was slightly open. He hadn't touched it since he woke up that morning. He opened the app's diagnostic tool and frantically traced the origin of the message. There was no IP address, no server. The message seemed to be coming from nowhere, and everywhere all at once. Then his blood ran cold when the app's biometric scanner reported a match. The DNA profile embedded in the message matched his mother's. The very DNA he had uploaded years ago. How was this possible? She was dead. This shouldn't be happening. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. There's something I need to tell you. Something I couldn't say when I was alive. Before he could reply, the lights in his apartment flickered violently, plunging him into a stuttering darkness. The heater hissed and clanked, as if struggling to breathe. Ethan's pulse quickened, fear choking his throat. His phone screen suddenly went black. Then it lit up again with a video message. The grainy footage showed a dark room, his childhood home. A shadow moved in the corner. A soft voice, unmistakably his mother's, whispered, "Find the locket. It's the key." Ethan's hands shook as he searched his drawers. Under a pile of forgotten letters, he found a small, tarnished silver locket. He opened it, and inside was a faded photograph and a hidden microchip. His phone buzzed again. "I'm trapped, Ethan. The app wasn't supposed to work this way. I'm here, but I'm not free." The realization hit him like a hammer. This was no ordinary AI simulation. Someone had reached through the void. Something that wasn't just an echo or a memory. Ethan's apartment door creaked open by itself. The temperature plunged. The shadows lengthened, reaching toward him. And then, in the dark, a whisper, "Help me before it's too late." Ethan's breath caught in his throat as the whisper echoed to the frozen air of his apartment. His eyes darted toward the door that had creaked open slowly, as if pushed by some unseen hand. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to slam the door shut and forget the nightmare unfolding before him. But his body was rooted in place, paralyzed by a mixture of fear and disbelief. The room felt colder than before, the shadows thickening and twisting into shapes that seemed almost alive. The phone in his trembling hands buzzed again, the screen illuminating the dim room with a ghastly blue light. Another message, but this time it wasn't just text. It was a link. Ethan hesitated, then clicked. The screen immediately loaded a series of files. Photos, videos, audio recordings. All from a time before his mother's death, but things he had never seen before. One video showed his mother sitting at the kitchen table late at night, her face pale and eyes wide with terror. The camera was shaky, as if recorded by someone hiding nearby. She whispered, barely audible, "They're watching. They want the locket. If they get it, everything is lost." Ethan's pulse quickened. He fast-forwarded the footage, desperate for answers. The camera cut to a figure cloaked in shadow, standing just outside the window. A chill ran down his spine. The figure didn't move like a human. It was jerky, unnatural, like a puppet with broken strings. He looked down at the locket in his palm. The tiny microchip hidden inside must be the key. His mother's message had said so. But why? What secrets did this locket hold that made it so important, even after her death? His phone buzzed again. Ethan listened carefully. The app, it opened a door it should never have touched. "I'm caught between worlds, and something is trying to cross through. The locket holds a seal. Without it, the darkness will come." Ethan's heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst. He had always known there was something strange about his mother's death, but he never imagined it was tied to something supernatural, something dangerous. Suddenly, the lights in the apartment flickered violently again. The room plunged into darkness, except for the phone's eerie glow. Then, the heater shut off with a final hiss, and the cold enveloped Ethan like a suffocating shroud. A voice, low and guttural, whispered behind him, "Give me the locket." Ethan spun around, but there was nothing, just the shadows dancing on the walls. His hands shook as he clutched the locket tightly. The air thickened, heavy with an unnatural presence. It was as if the very darkness itself had come alive, pressing closer, hungry. His phone buzzed yet again. This time, a single word appeared on the screen. "Run." Panic surged through him. Without thinking, Ethan grabbed his coat and the locket and bolted for the door. But as he reached it, the handle slammed shut on its own, locking him inside. The shadows lengthened, curling around the edges of the room like tendrils. His phone vibrated violently. Another message appeared. "They are here. You can't hide. Find the seal before it's too late." Ethan's mind raced. The they his mother warned about, who were they? What did they want? And why was the locket so critical? Suddenly, a sharp coldness grazed his neck. He gasped, spinning again, but nothing was there, only the suffocating darkness and the echo of his own ragged breathing. Desperately, he tried the door handle again. Locked tight, his phone lit up with a new message, a photo of an ancient symbol, one Ethan didn't recognize. But when he examined the locket closely, he saw the same symbol engraved faintly on its back. The app's AI voice, distorted and mechanical, suddenly spoke to the phone speaker. "The seal must be completed. Find the place it belongs. Time is running out." Ethan swallowed hard, gripping the locket like a lifeline. He had no idea where the place was. But he knew one thing with terrible certainty. Whatever had reached through the app wasn't done with him yet. And if he failed, the darkness lurking just beyond the veil of this world would spill through, and nothing and no one would be safe. He glanced again at the phone screen. Another message appeared. "Trust no one, not even yourself." The lights flickered one last time before plunging Ethan into complete blackness, leaving only the cold and the pounding in his ears, an ominous promise that the nightmare had only just begun. The darkness in Ethan's apartment felt alive, oppressive, as if it breathed alongside him. He stood frozen for what felt like minutes, gripping the locket so tightly that the metal bit into his palm. His phone lay on the floor. Screen cracked from a careless stumble during his frantic attempt to escape. Despite the damage, it still glowed with an unnatural light, displaying a new message that chilled him to his core. They're closer. Ethan's mind raced. Who were they? What had his mother been trying to protect? He forced himself to move, dragging his hand across the cold, locked door, searching for any way out. There was none. Panic bubbled beneath his skin, thick and suffocating. But amid the fear, a sharp clarity took root. He couldn't wait here. The darkness would consume him if he did. He slumped against the door, breathing heavily, his thoughts spinning. The locket was a key. His mother's cryptic messages left no doubt. But key to what? The symbol on the locket didn't match anything he recognized from his past. The video from his mother showed a shadowy figure stalking the night. It was as if a war between worlds had been silently raging, and somehow he had been dragged into its center. Suddenly, a cold draft brushed past his ear, faint whispers echoing from the shadows. They sounded like voices, whispers, some pleading, some warning, some filled with malice. Ethan covered his ears, but the voices only grew louder, overlapping into a deafening roar inside his skull. His phone buzzed again. The screen flickered to life and showed a new message, this time from an unknown number. Ethan Tran, the locket belongs to the Order. You have awakened forces older than your mother's death. You must find the old chapel on Ashland Street. There, the seal could be restored or broken forever. Ethan's pulse accelerated. Ashland Street. He didn't know where that was, but the name felt familiar, like a whisper in the back of his mind. Maybe it was near his childhood home, or somewhere he'd passed countless times without ever noticing. With no better option, Ethan grabbed his coat, pocketed the locket, and headed for the door again. This time, it opened easily, as if the darkness itself decided to release him. But the chill lingered, and the feeling of unseen eyes tracking his every move did not fade. Outside, the Chicago streets were deserted beneath a sky black as spilled ink. The snow had stopped falling, but the bitter cold was relentless, biting through his thin jacket. Streetlights flickered with a sickly orange glow, casting long shadows that danced and twisted unnaturally. As he walked toward the bus stop, his phone buzzed yet again. Another message, this time from his mother's contact. Beware those who walk in the light, but serve the darkness. Not all who claim to help are friends. Ethan swallowed hard. The app had somehow become a portal for voices from beyond, the living and the dead, friends and foes alike. His rational mind screamed that this was impossible, that he was losing grip on reality, but the evidence before him was undeniable. The bus arrived with a screech of brakes, and Ethan climbed aboard. As the vehicle pulled away, he pulled the locket from his pocket, watching the faint glimmer of the ancient symbol in the streetlight's glow. Suddenly, the lights inside the bus flickered and dimmed. Passengers shifted uncomfortably, whispering amongst themselves. Ethan's eyes scanned the crowd, but all faces were blank, too still, too cold. Then a whisper came again, but this time it was a voice he knew, soft and trembling. It floated from the back of the bus. Ethan, don't trust them. His heart stopped. He turned toward the voice, but the seat was empty. The whispering grew louder, spreading to the cabin like a creeping fog. The air grew thick with a suffocating dread, and Ethan realized the bus was no ordinary ride. It was a trap. Suddenly, the bus jolted violently, throwing passengers forward. The windows frosted over completely, cutting off the outside world. Ethan's breath fogged in the icy air. A cold, unseen presence moved among them, unseen but felt, feeding on their fear. His phone buzzed again, displaying a chilling message. The Order watches. They are coming. Find the chapel before they find you. Ethan clenched his fists, determination hardening inside him like steel. He had no choice but to face whatever was hunting him. Somewhere out there, on Ashland Street, lay the secret to saving his mother's soul, and perhaps his own. As the bus barreled through the dark city streets, Ethan stared out the window at the shadows flickering beneath the flickering streetlights, wondering how much longer he could outrun the darkness closing in around him. The hunt had only just begun. The bus groaned to a halt on a deserted street. No announcement came over the intercom. No one moved. The lights buzzed overhead, flickering between dim orange and near total darkness. Ethan rose slowly, glancing warily at the other passengers. They remained unnaturally still. No breathing, no shifting, no blinking. Their faces were pale, ashen, eyes glassy and wide, like marionettes waiting for someone to pull the strings. A single whisper floated through the cabin. "Go now before they wake." He didn't hesitate. Ethan bolted down the aisle, burst through the door, and stumbled into the frozen silence of Ashland Street. The second his feet hit the ground, the bus doors slammed shut behind him with a metallic clang. The vehicle pulled away with a screeching hiss, its windows fogged, hiding the passengers whose faces he would never forget. He stood alone on the icy pavement, surrounded by silent brick buildings and broken street lamps. A thick fog rolled in from the alleys like something alive, curling around the corners of buildings and crawling along the cracked sidewalks. The locket in his pocket pulsed with heat, guiding him. Somewhere ahead was a chapel. Ethan walked cautiously, boots crunching on ice, heart pounding in his ears. Each step deeper into Ashland Street brought a chill that wasn't just from the winter air. It felt like something ancient lingered here, buried under the asphalt and stone, watching. Then he saw it. Tucked between two decaying buildings was a narrow alleyway. At the end of it stood an old stone chapel, barely visible through the mist. Its roof sagged under the weight of years, and its windows were black as voids. A rusted gate hung open, swaying slightly in the wind. Above the arched entrance, weather-worn letters read, "Sanctum Veritas," Sanctuary of Truth. The locket pulsed again, stronger now, almost burning. Ethan stepped forward, pushing the gate aside with a loud screech that echoed like a scream. The air grew thick as he approached the wooden doors, each one carved with symbols that matched those on the locket. Some were worn away, others freshly gouged, as if something had tried to claw its way inside. He pushed the doors open. The air inside hit him like a wave, stale, cold, ancient. Dust motes floated like ash through beams of sickly moonlight that filtered through the shattered stained glass. The pews were broken, scattered. The altar at the front was cracked straight down the middle, and behind it stood a large stone wall etched with a massive version of the locket symbol. As he stepped deeper into the chapel, the door slammed shut behind him. Ethan whirled around, heart hammering. No one was there, but he wasn't alone. A low chant began to echo through the space, coming from somewhere unseen. The voices were layered, overlapping, some human, some not. They spoke in a language he didn't know, but somehow understood. The seal must not be broken. The blood must not awaken. He approached the altar, locket in hand. The heat from it was unbearable now, like holding a coal. The symbol on the wall began to glow faintly, reacting to his presence. Then the shadows in the corners of the chapel began to move. Figures emerged, hooded, faceless, gliding silently along the floor. Their robes were tattered, soaked in something dark. Ethan backed away, holding up the locket like a shield. One of the figures raised a bony hand and pointed at him. "You brought the key," it rasped. "You carry the blood." Ethan's voice shook. "What do you mean?" Another step forward. "Your mother was the last of the Watchers, the guardians of the seal. She died sealing it again, but not before passing a legacy to you." "The seal? What's inside it?" They fell silent. The chapel trembled, dust falling from the rafters. "He waits," one of them whispered. "Beneath." Before Ethan could respond, a loud crack split the air. The stone wall behind the altar began to shudder. The symbol flared with light, and then split open, revealing a hidden passage descending into darkness. The robed figures began to scream. Inhuman, ear-splitting wails that made Ethan stagger. They clutched their heads, writhing, as if the light from the open seal burned them. "You opened it," one shrieked. "Fool! You opened it too soon." The floor trembled again. From the black passage below came a sound that didn't belong in this world. Something wet, something massive. The sound of chains dragging across stone. A deep breath, like the lungs of a god inhaling for the first time in centuries. Ethan ran. He bolted through the chapel, dodging crumbling pews and flailing shadowy limbs. He threw his shoulder into the wooden doors, bursting back into the cold night. The fog had thickened. The street outside no longer recognizable. Buildings twisted in impossible angles. The sky above was no longer black, but red, glowing as if backlit by fire. The city had changed, or the world had. His phone buzzed. He looked. One message. You've seen it now. There's no going back. The hunt begins. Don't let it take the locket. Don't let it take you. From behind, the chapel exploded in a cascade of dust and fire. The seal had opened, and something had escaped. Ethan didn't stop running until his lungs burned. He had awakened something ancient, something hungry, and now it was coming for him. Ethan ran through the warping streets of Chicago, though nothing looked like the city he knew anymore. Buildings stretched toward the sky in jagged spirals, like broken fingers clawing at the blood-red heavens. Street lamps flicker with unnatural rhythms, casting shadows that didn't match the angles of the objects around them. A dull humming filled the air, like the city itself was breathing, alive and watching him. He didn't know how long he had been running. Minutes? Hours? Time didn't seem to flow the same way anymore. Every block led him deeper into this nightmare version of his world. And all the while, he could feel it, something behind him. Not walking, not running, just waiting, tracking him like a predator with all the time in the world. He collapsed near the edge of a frozen fountain in a twisted version of Lincoln Park. The statues around it had changed. What used to be angelic figures now bore grotesque features. Cracked faces with too many eyes, limbs bent in human directions, and mouths carved open in endless silent screams. His phone buzzed again. The screen was cracked, nearly unusable, but the message was clear. You've tasted the first layer. It will call to your blood now. He stared at the screen, shaking. The locket throbbed against his chest, like a second heartbeat. He ripped it from his neck, ready to throw it, but just before he did, he heard her voice again. Defendant. It was his mother, not a whisper this time, not a message. Her voice, soft, desperate, real. He looked down. The locket had opened on its own. Inside, where a photograph had once been, was now a moving image. His mother's face, flickering like a candle in the wind. Her eyes locked onto his, and a tear rolled down her cheek. You have to go to the house. The one I told you never to return to. He knew exactly which house she meant. His childhood home. The one she had taken him away from when he was 8, without warning, in the middle of the night. The one they never talked about again. He had thought it was because of his father's death. An accident, she told him. But now he realized she had been hiding something, protecting him, and it was time to uncover the truth. He stood, gritting his teeth, every muscle aching. The wind howled louder now, carrying voices, his mother's voice, voices from dreams and memories that had long been buried. The locket pulsed again, brighter now, casting golden light in the crimson fog. He made his way across the distorted city, every block shifting, trying to lead him astray. Street names changed when he wasn't looking. Alleys turned into mazes. At one point, he passed a church that seemed to breathe, its walls expanding and contracting like lungs. Something inside it laughed, low and guttural, and Ethan didn't dare look back. Eventually, he reached it. The house stood at the end of a cul-de-sac that shouldn't have existed anymore. The paint was peeling. The windows were shattered. The front door hung on rusted hinges. But it was exactly how he remembered it in his nightmares. And worse, the air around it shimmered, like heat rising off asphalt, though the snow on the ground remained untouched. He stepped onto the porch. The boards creaked under his weight, but no sound echoed, not even his own breath. This place had been cut off from the world, and still he opened the door. Inside, the temperature dropped instantly. His breath came out in thick white clouds. Dust blanketed everything. Furniture was overturned. Broken toys scattered the floor. His toys? The walls were covered in drawings. Crude, childlike sketches done in red crayon. Some showed him and his mother smiling. Others showed other things. Dark figures with too many arms. Circles within circles. A door in the floor. And blood. Lots of blood. He followed the drawings deeper into the house, down the hallway to the basement door. It was nailed shut with rotted planks, but the locket vibrated violently in his pocket. The basement. He remembered this door. He remembered being forbidden from going down there. He remembered the nightmares he used to have, of hands reaching through cracks in the floor, of a voice calling him by name when he was too young to know fear. He pulled the boards away with trembling hands, one by one, until only the lock remained. He placed the locket into the rusted slot where a key should have been. It clicked open. Darkness spilled out of the basement like smoke. Not blackness, but something worse. A presence. A feeling of weight and pressure, as if the air had suddenly grown too thick to breathe. He descended. Each step felt like a mile. The stairs groaned underfoot. The basement was far deeper than it should have been. Stone walls stretched into infinity. Symbols, like those on the chapel wall, lined the corridors. His flashlight flickered, casting shadows that moved even when he stood still. Finally, he reached the bottom. A large chamber opened before him, circular and vast. In the center stood a stone pedestal, and upon it a mirror, not a normal mirror. This one shimmered like oil, swirling constantly with images he couldn't quite comprehend. As he stepped forward, the surface shifted, showing his mother, her real face, not the ghostly image from the locket. She was trapped inside, hands pressed to glass, mouth moving, screaming, though no sound came. He touched the surface. A jolt of electricity shot through him, seizing his muscles, locking him in place. The mirror exploded with images, his childhood, his father's death, not an accident, his mother chanting ancient words in a circle of salt, blood on her hands, sealing something away inside him. Inside him. The locket wasn't just a key. It was a prison. He was the vessel. The mirror cracked, a single line down the center. A growl echoed through the chamber. Deep, ancient, hungry. The shadows around the room began to shift, and from the walls emerged figures cloaked in bone and smoke, with no eyes, only mouths filled with jagged teeth. The seal was breaking. And Ethan knew, deep down, it was his blood that would complete the ritual. But his mother, her eyes, she was begging him not to let it win. The mirror pulsed once more, then twice. The crack widened. He had a choice: run, or confront what had been buried in his blood since birth. The chanting began again, not from the shadows, not from the past, but from inside his own head. The blood awakens. The vessel breaks. The hunt ends tonight. And as the mirror shattered completely, darkness surged from it like a wave, and Ethan screamed. Ethan didn't know how long he had been unconscious. His body ached like it had been torn apart and stitched back together wrong. When he opened his eyes, he was lying in the center of the stone chamber, surrounded by shards of the shattered mirror. The air was still, but it wasn't silence. It was the kind of stillness that comes just before something terrible begins. The chanting had stopped. The darkness had receded. But it wasn't gone. It was waiting, watching. He stood slowly, the locket still clenched in his fist, warm and pulsing like a dying heart. The voices in his head had quieted, replaced by a single thought that did not feel like his own. You must choose. The figures that had emerged from the walls were gone now, as if they had melted into the stone, leaving behind only scorch marks on the floor and walls. But something lingered in the air, a cold weight pressing against his chest with every breath. He turned toward the place where the mirror had stood. In its place now was a dark pit, bottomless, endless, and from it something moved. A shape. No, a form. It was human-like, but twisted. A figure with no skin, just muscle and sinew, with eyes that were his mother's, and a voice that sounded like her but broken, like a distorted signal. It stepped forward from the pit. "Ethan," it rasped, "you were made for this. You were born to carry it." He stepped back, horrified. "You're not her." The creature tilted its head, the corners of its mouth twitching upward in a grotesque smile. "No, but I was a piece of her remains. She bound me into your blood to protect the world from what I was becoming. But now the vessel is cracked, and I'm free." The truth hit him like a hammer. His mother hadn't just been sending him warnings. She had been fighting from the other side, holding this thing back. The app, the messages, the DNA, they were real. She was real. But so was the thing she had trapped in him. It had been there all along, whispering in the shadows of his mind. And now it had taken form. "You used her," Ethan said, his voice trembling with rage. "You wore her face, her voice. You lied." The thing stepped closer. "I was her grief, her rage, her sacrifice. I was what she became when she broke the seal to save you. But there is no salvation left, only choice." Then the pit behind began to pulse with light, red, alive, like a heartbeat. Images flashed through Ethan's mind, his mother in the old house, drawing sigils in blood, chanting ancient words, crying as she held baby Ethan in her arms. The spell had worked, but only partly. It hadn't destroyed the darkness. It had buried it in him. Ethan fell to his knees, the truth consuming him. He had been cursed since birth. Every choice, every code he had written, every connection he had made, it had all been leading to this moment. The app hadn't just allowed communication with the dead. It had been a beacon, a call, and something had answered. Suddenly, a whisper brushed against his ear. His mother's voice, clear, strong, real. "You are not it. You are still you. You can end this." He looked up. The locket had fallen open again. Inside, the moving image of his mother had changed. Now, she was standing in a circle of fire, arms raised, chanting. A final spell. One last ritual. Ethan stood, tears streaming down his face, and stepped toward the creature that wore her eyes. If you were her, you'd know what love is. You'd know what sacrifice means. The creature's face twisted. Love is weakness. Sacrifice is failure. "No," Ethan said. "It's the only reason I'm still here." And then he did what he knew he had to do. He opened the locket, whispered the words he saw written on the back of the photo, words in a language he didn't recognize, but that came easily to his lips, and threw the locket into the pit. The effect was instant. The chamber shook violently. The walls cracked. Screams echoed from the pit. Not just one voice, but hundreds, thousands. The light turned blinding. The creature let out a howl of rage and agony as it was dragged back toward the pit, its limbs flailing, its face melting, shifting between forms. His mother, Ethan himself, a child, an old man, something inhuman, something ancient. It reached for Ethan with one last desperate shriek. "You were mine!" But it was too late. The locket erupted in a column of light that consumed the pit and everything in it. The darkness screamed, then vanished. Silence returned. Ethan collapsed as the ground beneath him crumbled, and everything went white. He woke up in his apartment. His phone lay beside him on the floor, dark and cracked. The sun was rising outside. Snow fell softly through the window. Everything was normal. Almost. His hands still bore faint red marks. The locket was gone. The app deleted. But the memories remained. He checked the mirror above his desk, half expecting something to be wrong. But it was just his face. Tired. Pale. But his. Later that day, he visited his mother's grave. The wind was calm. The sky was gray but peaceful. He placed a single white rose on the stone. "I know what you did," he whispered. "Thank you." As he turned to leave, his phone buzzed again. One message. From unknown. "I'm proud of you." He stared at the screen for a long time, then smiled. For the first time in years, the silence in his head was just silence. He walked away, never looking back. And deep beneath the earth, where the pit once was, something ancient stirred and slept once more.